Revelation 2773. From the 14th of June 1943. Effect of the way of life on the whole people. The right faith and the right worship brings the human being closer to God, for the human being acknowledges God and seeks to fulfill His will. He lives in love, and the latter results in all blessings. The former far distance from God is reduced and the human being's purpose of earthly life has been achieved. He has found his way back to God of his own free will. And truly, nothing extraordinary is required of people, for they don't need to do anything of their own strength, but the strength from God is at their disposal without measure, and they only need to muster the will to use this strength. Yet how often does the human being's will fail and he does not reach the goal? Yet even then God's merciful love is still willing to show the soul still distant from Him the path which leads to Him. Even then God still takes care of it, even if in a form that is often not recognizable as God's love. But the soul has to give up open resistance, otherwise God's love withdraws, and this means a decline, a hardening of the spiritual substance, which results in an exceedingly agonizing state. Hence the being has to suffer as long as it does not profess God of its own free will and proves its love for Him through love for its neighbor. The more willing the being is to establish contact with God, the less suffering it will need for its development, and its existence on earth will be a peaceful one. And likewise, a generation which serves each other with love, thus likewise seeks to establish contact with God, will live in peace and tranquility on earth and have little need for earthly suffering, for it fulfills its actual purpose on earth. It strives to ascend, just as, conversely, unspeakable suffering will oppress a people which lives without love and does not try to bridge its distance from God by living a corresponding life of love and true faith. For such a people must be afflicted so that they may come to know. Only unkindness and unbelief draw a sorrowful fate which affects the individual more or less, for God does not abandon these people but seeks to change them through it. If the human being tries to distance himself from Him through unkindness, God uses more severe means but leaves him free will. Thus he has to gain closeness to God Himself through a right earthly way of life, for it is only the result of a life of love which the human being has to lead of his own free will. Yet he is constantly offered opportunities to practice love and can mature if he does not resist, that is, if he uses his will wrongly, into unkindness. Then his soul will harden more and distance itself from God. And it will not make use of its earthly life, that is its last embodiment as a human being, so that it will have to go through a renewed process for its redemption which will require infinite times again. And therefore God tries all means to make this repeated banishment unnecessary because it is inconceivably agonizing. Yet the human being's free will is the final deciding factor. And thus all earthly suffering is merely a means to change this free will so that it will strive towards God, and the human being will release himself from the constrained state through a life of love as long as he still lives on earth. Amen.